Hollywood has always been synonymous with glamour, but what happens behind the curtains is a dark reality that few know about. Imagine secret parties, surrounded by promises of fun, but that are actually settings of abuse and manipulation. Have you ever stopped to think about what really hides behind the glitter of the stars? Recently, the name of Sean Combs, or P. Diddy, has come into the spotlight with alarming accusations that reveal a dark side of fame. The story of Tania, for example, is a disturbing portrait of what happens when power turns into abuse. She was taken to a party as a gift and, upon arriving, found an environment of horror. But it's not just her. Allison Carter, with her experience of human trafficking, also brings to light the control and depravity that permeate these exclusive celebrations. What lessons can we take from this? The Bible has already warned us about the evil that lurks beneath the surface. We are facing a real spiritual battle, where we need to open our eyes and expose the truth. How can we be light in the midst of so much darkness? The answer is in the scriptures, which guide us to face this evil with courage and faith. Accusations against Sean Combs. Recently, the accusations against Sean Combs have become a hot topic in conversation circles. As someone who follows the music scene and pop culture, I couldn't help but reflect on the impact these allegations may have on his public image. The accusations include abuse and manipulation, and the seriousness of these claims cannot be underestimated. For many of us, Combs is more than a rapper. He is an icon, a symbol of success and power, and seeing this figure being the target of such allegations is, at the very least, disturbing. The testimonies of witnesses have emerged amid all this controversy, revealing an underexplored side of celebrity life. I was overcome by a sense of disillusionment when reading some of these stories. People who were close to him claim to have witnessed abusive behavior, and this casts a shadow over his entire career. It's curious how fame can distort people's perceptions, but at the same time, it's alarming to realize that many feel compelled to remain silent in the face of such serious situations. This situation makes me think about what's really at stake when it comes to public figures. The image we see in the media is carefully crafted, but what happens behind the scenes? The allegations of abuse and manipulation are not just personal issues, they also force us to reassess the culture around us. The admiration we feel for these personalities can obscure our ability to see the reality behind the glamour. It's an internal struggle for many, and I'm no exception. Furthermore, the implications of these revelations for Combs' career are immense. What will happen to his brand and influence if these allegations are confirmed? The consequences could be devastating, not only for him but for the entire industry. How we handle these issues may change the course of many aspects of pop culture, forcing a deeper reflection on what we accept and celebrate as a society. I also can't help but think about how these situations are just the tip of the iceberg. Looking at the music and entertainment industry as a whole, I realized that the accusations against Combs are not an isolated phenomenon. They are part of a broader pattern that needs to be addressed and discussed. The real question is, are we ready to face the reality that hides beneath the shiny surface of glamour? Secret parties in Hollywood. Secret parties in Hollywood have always been a fascinating mystery for many of us. The idea of celebrities gathering in private settings, away from the public eye, is both intriguing and disturbing. What really happens at these parties? I've heard rumors of morally questionable behavior and abuse that supposedly occurs, and it makes me reflect on the elitist culture that permeates the entertainment industry. In a world where fame and power are idolized, it's no surprise that private parties become a space where excesses and control can flourish. What is acceptable in an environment where everyone is trying to maintain their public image can be very different from what happens in the shadows. These parties often become places of escapism, where society's rules seem not to apply, and this can create fertile ground for abuse and manipulation. When you think about the stories circulating about these parties, it's hard not to feel uncomfortable. The idea that celebrities are engaging in behavior that many would consider morally questionable is, at the very least, disheartening. It's as if we're watching a spectacle where the line between right and wrong becomes increasingly blurred. And this leads us to question, how far will people go in search of approval and acceptance? The culture of excess is often glamorized, but when we look closer, the implications are quite dark. What happens at these parties is not just a matter of fun, it's a reflection of how power can corrupt and how the pursuit of fame can lead to behaviors that dehumanize individuals. It's a wake-up call for all of us, reminding us that behind the glitter, there can be disturbing realities. What really worries me is the effect these parties have on those who are not in the limelight. The victims of abuse in environments like these often remain voiceless, suffocated by a culture of silence and fear. And as these events continue to take place, we are all called to reflect on what we are willing to accept as part of the price of fame. Impact of the movie Blink Twice. The thriller Blink Twice, directed by Zoe Kravitz, sparked a wave of discussions that extended beyond the big screen. The film not only entertains but also exposes disturbing realities that many would prefer to ignore. Watching it, I couldn't help but connect with the real-life reports of abuse and manipulation circulating in the realm of celebrity parties. It's as if fiction is intertwining with reality in a way that demands our attention. One of the most impactful things about the movie is its ability to capture the essence of human vulnerability. The characters face dilemmas that reflect the struggle of many who find themselves in environments of high power and wealth. This made me think about how the abuse of power manifests itself in different forms and contexts. The film, though fictional, is a mirror that reflects the dark truths many try to hide. Moreover, the way the movie addresses the culture of excess in Hollywood is incredibly relevant. It forces us to confront the idea that fame can not only distort reality but also create an environment where abusive behaviors become normalized. I wonder how many similar stories are hidden in the shadows of the entertainment industry. It's an invitation to reflect on what we are willing to accept as part of the show. The impact of Blink Twice goes beyond entertainment. It provokes a necessary conversation about experiences of abuse and manipulation in a context that many consider glamorous. By bringing these issues to light, the film becomes a powerful tool for raising awareness and challenging narratives that are often silenced. Art, indeed, has the power to illuminate difficult truths. The connection between fiction and reality reminds us that we cannot close our eyes to what is happening around us. The film not only entertains but also incites us to act, to question, and to seek the truth. And in doing so, we are forced to confront what really lies beneath the shiny surface of the celebrity world. It's a call to action, an opportunity to expose what needs to be exposed. Victim testimonies. When reading the accounts of Tania and Allison Carter, it is impossible not to feel a tightness in your chest. They are not just names on a list of victims, they are voices that echo amidst a deafening silence, revealing experiences that many would prefer to forget. Tania shares how, at an elite party, she found herself surrounded by people who seemed more interested in her appearance than her humanity. It is distressing to imagine how vulnerable we can become in environments where power and wealth overshadow empathy and respect. Allison, in turn, brings to light a narrative of manipulation that is, in itself, devastating. Her story forces us to confront the harsh reality that, in glamorous parties, where smiles and champagne abound, there can be a subworld of abuse and helplessness. It's almost surreal to hear how, amid laughter and loud music, the line between fun and exploitation can become dangerously thin. These experiences are not just isolated accounts, they are part of a broader pattern that compels us to question what really happens behind closed doors. What impresses me the most is the courage of these women to speak out. They didn't just recount traumatic experiences, they are challenging a system that often prefers to keep these stories hidden. The fear of retaliation and the stigma surrounding abuse victims are immense barriers. By sharing their experiences, Tania and Allison are not only seeking justice, they are creating space for others to feel encouraged to do the same. This is an act of resistance and strength. It is sad, however, to realize that these parties, which should be moments of celebration, have become traps for many. Reflecting on the testimonies, it's impossible not to think about the broader social implications. When an environment becomes conducive to abuse, the price is paid by the most vulnerable people, often invisible to the eyes of society. Tania and Allison, with their stories, force us to face this harsh reality and question what we can do to change this narrative. These accounts are not just part of a conversation about Hollywood, they are a call to action. We urgently need more voices like Tania's and Allison's, who stand against the normalization of abuse in environments that should be safe. Only then can we begin to dismantle the culture of silence and impunity that permeates elite parties and, by extension, all of society. The spiritual influence of power and fame. Reflecting on the relentless pursuit of power and fame, I can't help but think about how this can corrupt even the noblest of hearts. Fame, which at first glance seems like a dream come true, often turns into a nightmare for those who pursue it at any cost. It's as if we are living in a reality where Ephesians 6 verse 12 becomes increasingly evident, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. When the desire for recognition and control becomes the priority, morality can easily be lost. Considering Romans 1 verses 28 to 32, which speaks about human depravity, I am led to reflect on the consequences of rejecting ethical values in exchange for fame. The pursuit of status can lead us to behaviors that, under normal circumstances, we would consider unacceptable. Fame, in many cases, is not just about being known, it is a fight for control and domination, and this can lead to a spiral of moral corruption. History is filled with examples of figures who, upon reaching the height of fame, became lost in excesses and abusive practices. It is alarming how current culture often glorifies these behaviors, turning them into something almost normal. This normalization can create a vicious cycle where abuse becomes an integrated part of the power dynamic. What should be a space for creativity and expression turns into a battlefield where ethics are sacrificed in the name of success. This reflection is not just about Hollywood, it is a warning to all of us, as the pursuit of power can blind us to the most essential truths of life. When I think of biblical teachings, it becomes clear that the pursuit of fame without a solid foundation of values can lead us away from what truly matters. What are we willing to sacrifice in the name of success? This question is crucial, especially when we consider the testimonies of victims emerging from this world. Power and fame are not inherently bad, but the way we seek and maintain them can lead us down a path of destruction. Therefore, it is vital that we pause and reflect on the priorities in our lives. Fame may seem attractive, but we must ask ourselves at what cost we are seeking that recognition. True power, contrary to what many might believe, lies in living according to ethical principles and values that promote justice and dignity. This is the light we need in a world so prone to darkness. The presence of respected celebrities. It's intriguing to think about how respected figures, such as Oprah Winfrey and Denzel Washington, become part of the narratives of abuse at elite parties. By mentioning these icons, we are confronted with an uncomfortable reality. Even those who are admired and revered may somehow be involved in a system that allows the perpetuation of abusive behaviors. This raises a crucial question: to what extent does the normalization of abuse extend within the Hollywood elite? When we hear these mentions, it's hard not to question the responsibility of celebrities towards their peers and society. When someone in a position of power ignores abusive behavior, what does that say about the culture we live in? The presence of respected celebrities in environments that harbor morally questionable behaviors is not mere coincidence, it is a reflection of an industry that often prefers to silence the voices of victims rather than confront inconvenient truths. Moreover, the way these celebrities are idolized can create a barrier that prevents others from feeling comfortable denouncing abuses. When admired figures do not speak out against what is unacceptable, it can send a message that silence is the norm, further perpetuating the cycle of abuse. The responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless is a call that we all, especially those in positions of influence, must embrace. The normalization of abusive behaviors is not just a problem in Hollywood, it is a reflection of a society that often minimizes the suffering of individuals in the name of glamour and entertainment. As we discuss these cases, we need to remember that every account of abuse is a life interrupted, a dream shattered. Celebrities who do not take a stand against these behaviors are, in a way, allowing the culture of silence and impunity to continue to thrive. Finally, the mention of respected figures in the testimonies of victims forces us to rethink the role we all play in the fight against abuse. We must demand more from our idols, and at the same time, reflect on what we are willing to do to support those who dare to speak out. What happens at elite parties should not be treated as a private matter, it should be a call to action for all of us, regardless of our status or influence. The Christian response to evil. When we look at the darkness surrounding many of these reports of abuse and manipulation, the Christian response becomes increasingly clear. The call to be light in the midst of darkness, as per Matthew 5 verses 14 to 16, resonates deeply in times like these. The light is not just a metaphor, it is an action. It is our responsibility, as Christians, to expose evil deeds and not allow darkness to prevail. Every time a voice is silenced, every time a story is ignored, darkness gains ground. It is easy to feel powerless in the face of a culture that seems so deeply rooted in abuse and corruption. But the truth is that the light of Christ is powerful enough to illuminate even the darkest corners. Ephesians 5 verse 11 urges us to have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. This exposure is not just about pointing fingers, it is about bringing the truth to light and promoting healing. By speaking and listening to victims, we are challenging the status quo and making a call to responsibility. Moreover, it is essential that we cultivate a spirit of vigilance. Darkness does not dissipate on its own, we need to be alert and ready to act. This means educating ourselves and others about the signs of abuse, supporting those who stand up, and, above all, not allowing fear to stop us from speaking out. Spiritual vigilance is a crucial component in our fight against evil. The Christian response to evil. It is not easy to talk about the evil that lurks beneath the shiny surface of fame and glamour. Pop culture often seduces us with images of success and power, but, as we know, the reality can be quite different. The Bible calls us to be light in the midst of darkness, and this makes me reflect on how each of us can take a stand in situations that seem so dark. In Matthew 5 verses 14 to 16, we are reminded that we are the light of the world, a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. This passage echoes in my mind whenever I come across news of abusive and manipulative behaviors that seem so entrenched in the world of celebrities. It is intriguing to think about how we can be that light in an environment where so many feel comfortable practicing evil. The exposure of scandals and stories of abuse often generates outrage, but it also offers us an opportunity to reflect. What does it mean to be a light? It means exposing the deeds of darkness, as Ephesians 5 verse 11 teaches us. This implies not only criticizing but also acting. We, as a community, need to unite to denounce and fight injustice, not just express outrage on social media. When I look at the reality of secret parties in Hollywood, I realize that this is a place where light seems scarce. The celebrities we often idolize frequently become complicit in a system that perpetuates abuse. The Christian response to evil cannot just be a criticism but must involve a call to action. How can we, individually and collectively, oppose this culture of silence and fear? We need to unite and use our voices to defend those who have no power. That is what it means to be light, to be a voice for the voiceless. In a world so full of darkness, hope is an essential component. When we talk about exposing evil, we also need to talk about alternatives to evil. We have the light of Christ, which gives us the strength and courage needed to face the darkness. In moments of despair, it is easy to lose hope, but as Christians, we are called to remember that the light always prevails over darkness. This hope should motivate us to act, to take a stand, and to refuse to be complicit in silence. The Christian response to evil is not just about what we do, but also about how we live. It is a call to integrity, authenticity, and compassion. We are called to be examples of love and justice in a world that often seems to have no space for these virtues. And so, as I reflect on the dark realities surrounding elite parties, I become increasingly convinced that each act of kindness and justice is a small light that can, collectively, illuminate even the darkest places. Spiritual vigilance and hope. Spiritual vigilance is a necessity in our contemporary world, especially when we consider the dark realities that surround us. John 16 verse 33 reminds us that although we face tribulations, we can take heart because Christ has overcome the world. This is a powerful reminder that the victory has already been won, but it also calls us to action, vigilance, and perseverance. In times of crisis, it is easy to let hope grow cold, but vigilance invites us to remain firm in our faith and not lose sight of the greater purpose God has for us. I think of the secret parties and abusive behaviors that frequently come up in discussions about celebrities. The reality is that these situations are not just isolated stories, they are representations of what happens in our world. When we are not vigilant, we can easily be led to ignore the injustices around us. Spiritual vigilance helps us keep our eyes open and our hearts sensitive. We need to be aware of what is happening, not only in our lives but also in the lives of others, especially those who are vulnerable and often silenced. Hope is a beacon that lights our way, even in the midst of darkness. However, this hope is not a passive concept, it is a call to action. When we are vigilant, we not only observe injustices but also seek ways to combat them. This may mean supporting those who denounce abuses, educating others about the realities happening, or even being an active advocate for the changes we wish to see. Vigilance leads us to act with purpose and not just be spectators in a world filled with pain and injustice. Moreover, spiritual vigilance allows us to see beyond what physical eyes can perceive. Often, the realities that unfold in elite parties and circles of power are shrouded in secrets and misinformation. We need discernment to understand what is really happening and how we can respond. This leads us to a place of prayer and a search for divine wisdom, asking God to help us navigate these murky waters and be instruments of His justice and light. The result of this vigilance and hope is a life that reflects the essence of Christ. When we remain alert and filled with hope, we have the ability to transform darkness into light. I remember that each act of courage and every voice raised in defense of the truth are steps in the right direction. This is how the light of Christ can overcome the darkness and, at the same time, invite us to participate in this struggle. Ultimately, spiritual vigilance not only protects us but also empowers us to be agents of change in a world that so desperately needs hope and light. As we reflect on everything we've discussed today, it's essential to remember that these stories are not just about celebrities, but about the spiritual battle we all face. Have you ever stopped to think about how these realities connect with your life? The Bible teaches us that we are in a constant confrontation between light and darkness. The question I ask you is, what are you doing to be the light in this world? It's easy to get carried away by distractions and glamour, but we need to be alert and aware. How can we protect ourselves from the traps surrounding the empty promises of this world? The answer lies in the Word of God. When we delve into the Scriptures, we find direction and protection. Have you ever read a verse that changed your perspective on something? Share it in the comments. And as you reflect, remember, each of us has a role to play. Let us be voices of hope and denunciation against what is evil. May we unite in prayer and action, always seeking the truth. What will you do from now on? The journey does not end here, it's only beginning. Stay tuned for our next video, where we will explore more about how to live in a world that often opposes God's principles. Until then.